G'day! In today's video, I'm replacing a display on an iPad Pro 10.5 inch. I've had it sitting on my blue heat pad here. This one. For around about 10 minutes. And now I'm going to use a metal pry tool and some isopropyl alcohol to get into it. Now I'm curious to see how easy it's going to be to get in here. So far, very easy. There we go. But your experience may vary. Which, at the moment, the glass is just fragmenting off for me. Move that out of the way. Very brittle. A lot more brittle compared to the typical iPads I'm used to working on. Slide down here. So there's two ways to take it out. One, you could be delicate and try to preserve the display. Two, you can be rough and go bugger the display. Being as you can't really reuse them unless you have the right tools. So I'm a bit on the fence. If I can preserve the display while getting in here, I will. Now do be cautious. You can see possibly down here, the connector's right here. So now what I'm going to want to do is heat up or put some isopropyl under here and lift this up and slide it back. Might even be able to do that without isopropyl. Break enough of the adhesive. There we go. Bugger. Have to clean up some glass down here a bit later. Go. Now here comes the challenge. Now we look to be Phillips head screws just down here. Now do press your home button to make sure you are actually switched off. Now it's not the disassembly part that has me concerned right here. It's how am I actually going to go about reassembling it. I mean, there is that much tension on these two screws. Move the bracket up and out, and from there, should just be able to flick it. Those bottom two really wanted to stay there. So I'll put aside that for a minute. Right now, while I've got the heat into the screen, I'm going to focus on the fingerprint scanner / home button down the bottom here. Well, I best compare it with another screen. Great, so looking at it, the connector is fine. I'll use my friend isopropyl. And under here we have one connection. Put that aside for the minute. Flick up. And we're out. Now it's a matter of getting under here. One thing you do need to note is I'd recommend taking the ring off here and installing that on the new screen, as mine doesn't actually have it, and without that you're going to have a lot of dramas getting the home button to function. Did have the adhesive just separate from there? If you can preserve that, you definitely want to. Go. I'm going to move this old screen out of the way. Give this area a quick brush and also turn down my heat to 60 degrees Celsius rather than 75. This one definitely looks like it's been a refurb of some variety. As we can see, random swirls. Don't know what's going on here. Take that out of the way. I'll zoom you guys back in. Now let's figure out how to put this home button back in. I say figure out, but it's not that difficult. I've still got tacky adhesive on the corners here, here, and here. And this home button does physically act as a home button. It clicks in. It's not just Touch ID. To begin with, I want to stick this one back down. In here, actually probably the other way around. Just looking at it. Go. That's not wanting to stick as well as I would like to have it. Making up words now, but what you get. Now I do need to remove the old glue off there. And in theory, I'll focus on feeding the button down and under the display to begin with. Excuse that horrible fan belt that's probably getting picked up on the microphone right now. Some car seems to be definitely struggling outside. Up goes the latch. And there we go. That should be in. Flip it over. Home button does look to be sitting right. Does seem to be clicking. So from there, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to let that heat up for a bit, so it becomes a bit tacky. Now also while I'm here, I'm just going to put some B7000 frame adhesive just around this connector, because I know it likes to lift off to the moon.
but putting some of this on there should stop it from lifting up on the customer.
I'm just going to leave that heat up for a little bit longer. So from here, I'm going to take off the backing tape, the various backing tape that's here. Now, if you do want to be extra cautious, you could potentially remove the backing tape that's already pre-applied and put on frame adhesive. Being there's so little of an area that makes contact, I'm going to probably put my trust in this. I will need to prep the frame prior to sticking the screen down anyway. So now all the adhesive is set to go, all on the outsides. I'm going to put this aside now and turn my focus back to the original frame in question. And I just want to go around the outskirts of it. Another thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery while we're here. It's usually attaching and removing screens while power is still going or getting supplied to them normally isn't a good thing at all. So just to reduce that potential risk of damaging your expensive iPad, it's definitely worthwhile to take the few extra seconds it's going to cost you to disconnect the battery. So I'm happy there's really no spare glass floating around. We'll zoom in on where we need to work, which is right here. So one screw, and with that screw removed, I'm going to slide a bit of plastic in there. And I don't have any specific plastic to go in there, so I'm going to make my own just out of a bit of shard plastic or some plastic packaging. Doesn't need to be big, all it needs to be is enough to disconnect the board or lift the board up from the battery. The dilemma is finding which way it needs to go. That way. So we'll slide that in there like so. That should be enough to disconnect the battery from going. So once this new screen's attached and screwed down, I'll lift this out from over here and screw it back into position. Should hopefully be straightforward. It's not going to be though. So let's compare connectors. Screen will live here. 1, 2. As you can already tell, it's not long enough to actually go where we need it to be. We're going to have to stand it upright, which is going to make this install a lot trickier for me and a lot trickier to record for you guys. So if I try and stand it up with a roll of tissues or toilet paper, so this is the deliberate stumpiness of cables I'm not a fan of. As I said, it's going to be very difficult for me to capture this on film for you guys. Now the connections should make a satisfying click or thud when they're pushed into position. If they don't make that noise, they're probably not fully connected. So far, so good. Another one, yep. And last one, fourth one out of the bunch. Click. Excellent. Now with this here, we have a sharp edge and a rounded edge. I'm going to assume that the sharp edge goes down towards the cables so it doesn't compress them. At least that's what I'm going to assume. Now that screw is not in correctly. I'll try and fix that in a moment. A smaller screwdriver would probably help with this repair. That one's nice and flush, that one is not. Don't want to pierce the battery. Done that before once. Don't want to do it again. There we go, that's all right. That will suffice. Next up from here, I'm going to lay it down. And from here I can access the battery. So if I pull this out, put its original screw back in. And from here, before you fully seal up the device, I'd recommend just give it a bit of a quick test, just to make sure that A, your home button isn't going to move around, and B, your touch actually works on the device. So give that a try. But after that, if there's no damage to the frame of the tablet, of your iPad, then in theory, you should just be right to potentially heat up the display and sit it down. So once I'm all happy with this, I'm going to turn my blue heat pad back on, stick it to 75 degrees Celsius, put it face down, and I'm going to put a box of screws on the top of it, just to compress it, to get it all bonded. One other thing I have just missed is the little camera surround. Granted, I don't believe it's that vital, but if it came out, it might as well go back in. So I'm also going to put some frame adhesive on there too, and then we should be pretty right to go. Anyway, apart from having to distort or almost stretch out the cables to reconnect them back to the main board, this should be a relatively straightforward repair. The two biggest catches I do foresee though is one, moving the home button over, which if you do lose that original gasket, I find that without the original double-sided adhesive gasket, it becomes fairly difficult to get that button to function correctly. And two, just that danger of those cables. But anyway, I'm going to put these under some weights and get that screen fully stuck down. I hope this helped you repair your iPad 10.5 Pro. See yous.